All right, folks, another episode of the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast. Day one of the NFL Draft is in the books, and we have new faces of the fantasy football, franchises, our future franchises. We have new faces in the fantasy landscape. Today, we're going to break down round one, and while we're watching the show, we're going to also break down the latest picks in round two. Talk about Bijan Robinson going to Atlanta and how Tyler Allgeier's heart broke into a million pieces. We're going to talk about why the Lions hate DeAndre Swift and what the heck's going on in the Lions backfield. We got wide receivers, tight ends, offensive linemen, everything you need to know that's going to really impact your fantasy leagues in 2023. Before we do, I want to make sure you follow us across the board at Razzball Fantasy on YouTube, IG, and TikTok. And of course, make sure you jump over to Razzball.com. But today's show, the NFL Draft, first round reactions, starting right now. All right, Gladys, we're here, we're live, we're ready to talk some football, talk NFL draft. What's going on, Gladys? What got you excited? Biggest reaction, first take from the first round of the NFL draft.
Anthony Richardson going to the Colts. Anthony Richardson going to the Colts.
Yay, nay. What do you think?
Yay. Oh, my God, yay. Right. Yay. All my girl parts were happy with that one. Yes.
It's like... Well, my boy parts were excited as well. All
See?
Right. So
how could they not be? Yeah.
No, that's a cool one too. I like the fit with Shane Steichen and what the Colts got. We were talking about Lamar Jackson going there potentially, but Lamar's now signed. Yeah. That's exciting. I love that. Let's bring in the third because today we're doing a triple. We're a triple threat. Obviously, like old school basketball. I feel like I'm holding the basketball. I'll be pass. Sky, you be shoot. And then Gladys could be, what's the other threat? Dribble, right? Yeah, triple threat. All right, what's up, Sky? First reaction from the NFL draft day one. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, digging it. I'm not going to spend too much time because people always yell at me when I give shouts out to offensive linemen and like cornerbacks that actually matter for the NFL. So I won't do that. However, I did love the non-fantasy relevant picks in the first round. I thought there were some great NFL moves. For fantasy specifically, Bijan's the obvious one going to Atlanta. We'll talk about that in a second. But Jahmyr Gibbs, surprising on all levels. First of all, to have one running back in the first round in NFL terms these days is very rare. Two is unheard of in modern day NFL drafting. And to have him going 12 to the Lions, who just brought in David Montgomery and have DeAndre Swift. I'm just happy my boy Jamal got the hell out of town. That's all I'm going to say. I like Jahmyr Gibbs a lot. I mean, Bijan's Bijan, and he's kind of the consensus, obvious number one running back in this draft class. However, there are a couple people every year who are like, yeah, but I like a different guy. That different guy is Jahmyr Gibbs. And the forever list of Alabama running backs that come in the NFL and dominate is impressive, obviously, with the competition they go up against. So love that for NFL terms, but in fantasy, that Lions backfield that already got mucky with David Montgomery coming over with DeAndre Swift just got so much worse. And I'm not even sure how to feel about him in Dynasty, to be honest.
Yeah, well, we're going to get into every single fantasy relevant pick in the first round. Even the dogs are amped up.
What up, Senior Sonny?
She's hyped.
No, that's not Sonny. Sonny's out of the room right now. Sonny is not excited for first round. He was a DeAndre Swift Dynasty owner. He's devastated right now somewhere. Yeah. So that is what it is. But let's talk about Bijan Robinson. Obviously, this guy is a top 10 pick. And when you get a top – and I understand. Let's separate football and fantasy football for this 1 second. Top 10 running backs for fantasy football usually come out of the gates dominating for fantasy football. And I got some stats to back that up too. But let's talk quickly, Gladys, about Bijan, his fit with the Atlanta Falcons. What's your first initial reaction about this? Are you buying him as a top 10 back in 2023?
Yeah, of course. Atlanta ran the ball on average the most last year, 33 rushing attempts per game. Their leading rushing attempter was their quarterback, who is no longer there, Marcus Mariota, followed sort of closely by Allgeier with 210. Bijan is hold my beer. Oh, he's not old enough to drink. Hold my coffee, and I'm going to just dominate. You know that when Atlanta saw him there, they were like, yes. They didn't even think about it. That was one of the quickest, here's a card. Let's go.
Yeah.
We're in. We want Bijan. I think it helps Ritter It helps Bijan. Doesn't really do much for Cordell Patterson if he stays. It doesn't really do much for Tyler Algier, but it is what it is. I'm all about the Bijan Robinson getting those 400, 300 rushing attempts that Marcus Mariota had, because Desmond Ridder's not going to be doing that.
I gotta tell you, all the work I did on Tyler Algier like a month ago is now a waste. So thank you, Atlanta. I had so many cool stats about Tyler Algier's like last 4 games in 7 games. Well, that was a waste of my time. Good thing I'm sitting there at 11 p.m. on a Friday, like, oh man, Tyler Algier could be decent. Well, you know what? Sorry, April Bob, it's over now. Anyway, just want to talk quickly about some of the stats I thought were interesting, right? So, top 10 running backs in the NFL draft, their rookie seasons, okay? The last 5 over the last. So Saquon 2018, you have Leonard Fournette, CMC in 2017, Zeke in 2016, and Todd Gurley in 2015. All 5 of those running backs, their rookie seasons, okay? They all finished in the top 10. Saquon was RB1. Leonard Fournette 10, CMC 9, Zeke RB2, and Todd Gurley RB9. So the question here for you, Sky, is first round pick already in 2023, or are you still like, okay, I'd rather take another guy and maybe get him in the second round?
Yeah, it really depends. I mean, I haven't solidified rankings per se just yet. Of course, a lot to happen before I lock those in. But I mean, every year they seem to be up there in consensus, and I am kind of a guy that I'd rather have a Dalvin Cook or an Alvin Kamara or whatever, Najee Harris, and then those guys are there. I mean, basically it's volume in NFL, right? Also, these running backs end up going to not great teams, right? Najee went to the Steelers last year, which we loved, or 2 years ago, which we loved, but the team wasn't so great, but he still got the work. Atlanta isn't as bad as they ended up being. Like, I'm a Marcus Homer. You guys know that on this program as a Duck, whatever, and his career has been his career. But I watched a lot of his games because I like Marcus as a player. And the Falcons were not only in games, but they were winning a lot of those games or a field goal or a touchdown away from many, many, many losses. And obviously they're L's, but the team's better, I think, than the public perception. What I mean by that is they have Drake, they have Pitts. I think Ritter's going to be fine. They have a better offensive line than they get credit for, and they have a good defense. And that division without Tom Brady anymore, without Drew Brees, obviously, the Panthers are totally unproven right now. The division's up for grabs. And I think the Falcons have a good opportunity, like everyone else, to make a wave in that. And they can ride the back here of Bijan Robinson. So I would say yes, back end of the first round, I'm okay with. Also, he can catch the ball, which is mandatory with running backs these days. So sure, pick 11 or 12. I'm okay. If not, certainly the beginning of the first round or second round.
Biggest difference between Najee 2 years ago is that Atlanta has the number 1 ranked PFF offensive line ranking in run blocking last year. So yeah, okay, let's get it going. All right, let's talk a little bit about the quarterbacks here. Now, not everybody. Listen, I love you both. Okay, I love you both very much. You guys are 2 of my favorite fantasy people right now in the industry, just because you guys are only ones.
Because we're right here. Because we're the 2 that's right here.
Because I'm contractually obligated to tell you that.
Exactly.
No, but to be honest, so I'm going to talk quickly about each of these quarterbacks, their landing spots, and you guys just feel free. Gladys, you first. I'll throw it to you. Just tell me which one you like the most. We have Bryce Young going to the Carolina Panthers. You have C.J. Stroud at 2, which is kind of a surprise, landing in Houston after all the hoopla. He ends up going second anyway. And 4 is Anthony Richardson going to the Indianapolis Colts. I know in the pregame show, the first thing you said was Anthony Richardson got you excited, but which one of these 3 QBs are you looking forward to the most for maybe, let's take it from a redraft standpoint, like 2023. Which one do you think will have the biggest year 1 impact?
For this season coming up?
Yeah.
Ooh, out of those 3, I would say probably I like CJ Stroud. I don't think it was that big of, I mean, who was saying that the Texans weren't going to pick him? I mean, you know what I mean?
Your boy Mel Kiper. No, I'm just kidding.
It was Mel Kiper. Mel Kiper's like, oh yeah, Will Levis is going to go number 1. I'm pretty sure it was Will Levis's, burner accounts that were like putting out that smoke that, yeah, Will Levis is like, oh, I'm sorry, the Steelers are picking. Will Levis is like the one. I always thought that Stroud would go to Houston. I think that with the system that he's going into, where they're not really going to ask their quarterback to lose games. They're, Joey Porter Jr., baby, to the Steelers with the 32nd pick. Yes. Thank you very much. My night's complete. See you guys later. Just kidding. They what?
No, go ahead.
I like Stroud. I don't know that I would pick any of those three for this year. Like, I like Richardson. I like Richardson a lot. I like what I think Strecken's going to do with him. But I don't know that I like him for redraft this season. I have a feeling that Minshew might start out as the starter, and Richardson will come in either very late in the season or not until next season, which I'm totally okay with, even though I don't play Dynasty. But I think that Stroud is in the best position to do well. That division isn't the greatest. Stroud has not many weapons that he's going to have in there, but I just feel that his accuracy and what I think that they're going to ask him to do will help him be the better of the three for the first year.
And Sky, from a more of a dynasty long-term look, which one do you like the most of these three guys?
Dynasty's tough. I want to say Bryce Young is a talent, but I don't believe in the Panthers. I want to say Anthony Richards too, but I don't necessarily believe in him either. He gives me like mad Vince Young vibes, which is not awesome. Super talented, whatever. I mean, everybody's athletic and amazing the first day of the draft and out of college. It's a totally different game when you go to the next level. Colts have weapons, so I think he's going to be the best up front. I do like CJ Stroud quite a bit, and I like what the Texans are building there. D'Amico Ryans is my boy, so I'm certainly rooting for them. But I like Bryce Young in general as a talent. However, just like I gave props to Alabama with their running backs, the list of Alabama quarterbacks that have won multiple championships and been Heisman Trophy finalists and all that stuff that do nothing in the NFL is unbelievable. So that, unfortunately, I don't love either. Going to the Panthers, which have nothing right now to build around other than Bryce Young, which is alarming. So I'm not really, I got to be honest. We have to pick these quarterbacks and talk about them because it's this year's crop of quarterbacks. But to be honest with you, compared to the last, say, 5 quarterback classes, I don't love any of these 3 guys, to be perfectly honest with you. And I think Anthony Richardson has the best opportunity to do something immediately because of his weapons around him. But I like CJ Stroud and Bryce Young as individuals. Otherwise, I just don't like their positions.
Are you a Will Levis truther?
No, not at all. I was a Davis Mills guy, which I know is laughable currently. Okay. But I thought he was going to be just fine last year. On our bowl prediction show at this time last year, I said that Davis Mills would make the Pro Bowl, and I was super duper confident about that. Obviously, it blew up in my face. So I think the Texans have a lot going for them building out. I just don't love CJ Stroud individually, and then we'll see what happens with his actual talent. And of course, it all is about coaching with so many of these guys up at the top.
Can I say something that really bothers me to this day is we did that show last year, and Sky's bold prediction was that Davis Mills would go to the Pro Bowl. And in the caption, I put Viva Los Mills. To this day, it haunts me that I did not put Viva Los Davis. Like,
yeah, Davis is the obvious move there.
What I mean, I at this point, I had to take a step away from the catchy graphics. I'm like, what are you doing? You know, you got to take a step back. I got to go to a darkness retreat. Me and Aaron Rodgers are sitting there. I'm like, you going to the Jets? He goes, are you going to make funny memes? I'm like, I don't think so. Yeah. But he ended up the Jets. I'm going to keep doing my best. It is what it is.
Most importantly about that episode recap quickly is I also did say that Marcus Mariota would be top 15 in fantasy points per game, which he was. So I just want to back up my Davis Mills flop with the shout out to Marcus who came through.
Listen, it's Sky, and we want to make sure you feel like you're being represented properly on this show.
I appreciate
yes, the man makes good predictions.
Thank you.
So here's a couple things about the top 3 guys. Number 1, Bryce Young with the Carolina Panthers. They actually did a good job. Frank Wright is actually a stabilizing hand. I can see a lot of parallels to what, Doug Peterson did with the Jaguars, stabilizing that franchise a little bit with Trevor Lawrence. But with Bryce Young, they did surround him with some decent veteran talent. I know Adam Thielen is aged, a little bit older than most people think, but they brought in DJ Chark as well. They also have Terrace Marshall, which is, we'll see, he's a second-round pick. They also brought in Hayden Hurst and Miles Sanders. So they're surrounding this rookie with some at least average to above average talent around him. Hopefully they go out in day 2 now and maybe go get him a younger receiver to he could build rapport with. But so there's something there. For the Texans, it's a little less. I mean, you got Nico Collins and John Mechie. Mechie's coming off a cancer diagnosis, and we don't know how much he's going to play this year. Plus, on top of that, Nico Collins, I think he might be a little bit underqualified to be a number 1 on the outside. I think he's a better complement receiver than a true alpha number 1. Solid player, absolutely. And the tight end, there really isn't one notable on the roster either. So there's not a lot of pass catchers on that team as well. They just got rid of Brandon Cooks. Now he's with Dallas. And then the last one, Anthony Richardson, I know they have, when you look at the talent with Michael Pittman and Paris Campbell, Campbell's gone now. Campbell is in Carolina, right? Yep. Where did Paris Campbell go? Right? Yeah. So yeah, there's another name for that. But so when you look at
Pierce, Pittman and Pierce. Alec Pierce is the other.
Alex Pierce. Yeah, of course. And then the tight ends are kind of like this weird hodgepodge of like 5th rounders that are decent sometimes, I guess. I don't know. So I think from a fantasy standpoint, Anthony Richardson starts. You pick him up because he's going to run.
Yeah.
And that's a cheat code for fantasy football. Don't care if he throws for 75 yards a game, because when he rushes for 100 and gets a touchdown or 2, you'll be fine. Will Levis to the Titans, folks. Titans in. The pick is in. Will Levis officially lands on a team. The Tennessee Titans, it's an interesting spot. Perfect spot, actually, I think, for him, because you got Ryan Tannehill. Sorry, Malik Willis. You're not going, long-term outlook there.
Sounds like I can drop Jake Locker finally.
Jake Locker, by the way. You know what?
Go Huskies.
I'm not gonna do it.
They moved up to get him. The Titans moved up to get him.
Yeah, of course they did.
I think he retired too soon. I think he was going to be a good second contract quarterback. Anyway, let's talk about Gibbs in Alabama, running back coming in Detroit Lions, and just like for just wow. Can we just get a DeAndre Swift trade? I want him to get traded to
I think he will.
Miami Dolphins. I think the Miami Dolphins make a ton of sense because Darrell Bevell was the OC and the interim head coach in 2020 in Detroit when they brought in DeAndre Swift in the draft. Just trade him to Miami, please, and unleash the beast. That's what I think of that. But Gladys, first thoughts about the Gibbs pick. Do you think he would be a good 1-2 punch with David Montgomery?
So we're assuming that Swift isn't there. Is that what we're saying?
You do whatever you want with this. I tried to lead it, but if you feel like you want to go another direction, that's fine too.
I do not think that the Detroit Lions is the best landing spot for Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, Jahmyr Gibbs is a passing running back, right? Like a receiving running back. He's a receiving running back. Detroit threw to their running back positions like the 11th most time, and there were other teams on that could have gotten him later that would have made more sense. The Chargers, with Austin Eckler not being happy, why didn't they just move up and get him up? They probably thought he was going to be there when they probably thought he was going to be there when they got him. Tampa Bay losing Leonard Fournette, I would have been happy to see him there. I don't particularly like him in Detroit. I don't particularly like Detroit's draft for the first round. I think that I'm sure they're going to try to get rid of Swift. I mean, I think his injuries were frustrating for them, but I don't think his talents will be maximized in Detroit as they could have been had he gone to a team that is more likely to pass to the running back.
So, Sky, quick thoughts about Gibbs.
Yeah. Man, from a Lions NFL standpoint, I love this. This is a Dan Campbell move. This is we need depth at running back. We're going to run, protect Jared Goff like they did last year. Jamal Williams, who I just love because the guy's a grinder and he's a Pokemon fan, and I just think he's fun. He had a league lead in touchdowns last year, right? And most of them for the 1 yard line, whatever. But nonetheless, they're going to run when they get inside the goal line. DeAndre Swift has proven, as much as he is talented, we all know that, and love his potential, it hasn't been there on a consistent basis enough for fantasy managers, let alone the actual NFL team. Go ahead.
But what about Sam Laporta, tight end, Iowa, goes to the Lions. What about Montgomery? How do you think they're going to use him?
So David Montgomery is going to be the grinder, I would
Okay.
imagine. DeAndre Swift is going to be the third down back. Jahmyr Gibbs now is a much better version of their like transitional guy. Also, the Lions, believe it or not, had one of the most fast-paced offenses last year.
Mhm.
So when they're up and down the field in between the 20s, and Goff was quite, effective, they're going to be rotating guys out to keep a guy like DeAndre Swift healthy and to keep David Montgomery healthy as well. Both those guys have been talented when on the field and efficient, but unfortunately not healthy. So Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, is great. Also, we have to understand we're fantasy people that play Dynasty, which is like this fake year to year to year thing, but it's also this year in redraft. We hate this for this year in redraft, obviously. The NFL is a right now plan with a long-term like goal, right? Jahmyr Gibbs is a great opportunity for getting work this year. And if anybody goes down, he's an immediate starting caliber running back for the Lions. He can catch the ball. He can grind. He can do goal line back, whatever, playing out of Alabama. If it doesn't work out this year, he gets plenty of reps, stays healthy, hopefully, and he comes in next year as the obvious number one for me. Swift is gone this year in the next couple of weeks or next year anyway, and I can't imagine Demon's going to be a long-term solution there regardless.
Who do you think is going to take Jamal Williams' red zone touches? Montgomery or Gibbs?
Probably. I think that could be Gibbs. Montgomery's probably going to be 1 and 2. If I'm Dan Campbell, Montgomery's my first and second down back.
Okay.
DeAndre Swift to start the season, third down minimum, and then specialty packages, maybe dual running back, slot, whatever.
Okay.
And then Gibbs is kind of a distant third, but Gibbs can do it all, obviously, as well. Because again, he's not some, scat back they got in the 4th round. He's an Alabama starting running back that can do everything. He's just in a thick backfield. But honestly, all this is probably moot because I would imagine they get rid of DeAndre Swift in the next week or two, or straight up during this draft.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Now
Philadelphia is looking for a running back, and if it's not Derrick Henry, it could be DeAndre Swift.
So the one thing I'm gonna say that's a caveat to this whole thing is that Swift is a free agent after this season, so they could just say, "Listen, we're gonna ride with Swift." Swift has proven not to stay healthy as a number 1 A or B to Montgomery. If he goes down, we now have a guy that has the talent to sustain the offense. You're not dropping down to a Justin Jaxon type player who's fine, league average running back, but now they feel like because they are on the cusp of playoffs, right? They know that they're right there, and they just want to make sure that they have the depth now to get them over the top just in case a guy like Swift goes hurt. So there is a reasonable explanation to keep all 3 backs. So I understand that, but I hate that and I don't want it.
Yeah, so for fantasy, it sucks. It's horrible for fantasy, and for dynasty, I don't even know how to judge him yet because he might not even play much. But the Lions are making the playoffs this year. They're going to have a deeper run, and they're going to need all these kind of backs, man. Like if anything happens to Goff and they run even more than they are, they're going to be in trouble. Just really quick, the Lions were 13th in average rush attempts per game last year, and I think that only increases this year. Jared Goff also had, I think it was like 11 or something receptions down at the 1 yard line that allowed Jamal Williams to get those 1 yard touchdowns. Yeah. If that flips a little bit, right, they might run the ball more, but they might not have as many rushing touchdowns. So just keep an eye on that. I love Jahmyr Gibbs as a player. I like the landing spot long-term NFL wise for the Lions. For fantasy, obviously it sucks because it eliminates basically 3 running backs off of our board.
Yep. All right, let's talk about the receivers. Now, they kind of went in order, so we're going to do the same thing we did with the quarterbacks. And you guys just pick which landing spot you like the best. But we had Jaxon Smith-Njigba, the wide receiver from Ohio State, lands in Seattle at 20, potentially a Tyler Lockett successor, but in the meantime could easily be a really rounded wide receiver 3 in that offense. 21 was Quentin Johnston for wide receiver TCU, lands with the Chargers. That team already has Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, and Josh Palmer. Is this a successor to Keenan Allen at some point? Just Josh Palmer kicking the slot in the future? I don't know. 22 was Zay Flowers with the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, Todd Monken, baby. Todd freaking Monken. I'm a huge Todd Monken guy. I'm excited for that offense. But they have Odell, Zay Flowers, and Rashad Bateman. So you could definitely replicate those Bucs offenses they had a couple years ago. And then at 23, it was Jordan Addison, the wide receiver at USC, went to Minnesota. Very nice player here. Compliment Justin Jefferson. Gladys, give us your first reaction to these 4 receivers. Which one did you like the landing spot the best for?
It was a toss up between Michael Mayer just went to the Raiders, by the way. It was a toss up between. I like Zay Flowers, but I just don't. I'm not as thrilled about Todd Monken as you are. I'm sorry. Nothing personal. Nothing
I
personal.
feel, you know what, Gladys? You can't tell me not to take it personal, right? It's personal, all right? I'm taking it personal.
I think I like Jordan Addison, actually. I think there's like at least 120 targets that, are open for him. Adam Thielen's gone. Justin is still there, so that's the threat that's going to keep him open. I like Jordan Addison the best, but I would not be upset if I picked up Zay Flowers for redraft this year and see what he can do. I mean, you have to think that with those three and Mark Andrews, they're going to have to be airing that ball out. I mean, Lamar's got to prove that he's worth 59, 52 million a year, that holdout. And Monken's going to try to help him prove that. And I'm not an Odell truther, so I'm not really that high on his talents. But I think Zay Flowers his yards after the catch are pretty darn good, and he has like remarkable hands. I can see him becoming Lamar Jackson's favorite. But I like target-wise, if I was PPR, I would go Jordan Addison.
Sky Guasco.
Yeah, four of these wide receivers went in a row. As you mentioned, Jaxon first, Quentin, Johnston, Zay Flowers, then Jordan Addison. I got to agree. I mean, Jordan Addison's my guy for sure. I'm a Pac-12 dude. Being a Duck fan, I watch a lot of USC football. Jordan Addison, I would even argue, is outside of Jaxon Smith-Njigba is probably the second best running or wide receiver in my opinion in this draft class. So Minnesota obviously has all the work open. With Adam Thielen moving on, and obviously Justin Jefferson taking, triple coverage, if you will. So Jordan Addison, I think, is going to eat. So I love him at the value within this draft class. But we haven't talked about Quentin Johnston, who I want to give a shout out with the Chargers, right? I mean, Mike Williams is great. Keenan Allen's great. Both of those guys can't stay healthy. Keenan Allen probably be moving on in the next year or two. Mike Williams can't stay healthy. I mean, obviously Justin Herbert has all the talent in the world and the potential, but his guys can't stay healthy for consistency. TCU wide receiver, another 6'3" guy for the Chargers. They only draft monsters, which is great. So obviously that's red zone potential. He's an outside receiver, but he can play a little bit of slot. I love that. So Quentin Johnston for me is kind of a sleeper in this group, if you will. I think Zay Flowers has the most opportunity right off the bat because Baltimore has nobody else with a broken Odell. And then Jordan Addison, I think, has the biggest ceiling because the Vikings offense and his talent. And then Jackson Smith, I think, is the best overall talent in this, but he's got two monsters in front of him, right? So, the Seahawks obviously are not thought of as a passing team. 15th in the league last year, about 34 pass attempts per game. Don't love that. We know that Pete Carroll wants to run the ball as much as possible. DK and Tyler Lockett are leaps and bounds the number 1 and 2 there until they move on or retire. So don't love that. And I can't rely on just slot from a number 3 wide receiver with Geno Smith. So if I'm ranking these guys personally, it's Jordan Addison, actually, Quentin Johnston, then probably Jaxon just on talent, and Zay Flowers, but Zay Flowers might be number 3 based on opportunity.
I think for me, from this perspective, I dabble in Dynasty. Obviously, redrafts are our main focus, but from a overall standpoint, I think you just got to take a step back and ask yourself, who has the best quarterback for the next 10 years? And then when you factor that in, it's not even close. It's Quentin Johnston.
Yeah,
you're tied to Justin Herbert, who's not even in his prime yet. Justin Herbert has just scratched the surface. By the way, and they got Kellen Moore, who wants to air it out. There's an offense that could really want to throw a bunch. Then you say to yourself, okay, let's take a step. It's like in 2023, you might need to take a little bit on the chin and say, he's definitely doesn't have the biggest upside this year. You have Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and Josh Palmer on that roster right now. But remember, Keenan Allen, free agent next year, gone. Josh Palmer, I know he's a nice player, but he's not a first-round pick. He does not have that pedigree. And Mike Williams cannot stay healthy. So it's just like you could easily see a scenario tied to Justin Herbert on a very pass-heavy offense where this guy is playing 100% of the snaps as soon as this year. Give me that potential upside in Dynasty. Redraft too. I mean, as a late round flyer, not too bad either. Obviously, the other thing with Jaxon, Smith-Njigba too is Tyler Lockett has an out after this year, and then but if they don't take that out, he's got 2 more years after that. So there could be 3 years where it's Lockett, him, and Metcalf on that roster as well. When you jump down to Zay Flowers, the one thing I will say is that yes, Bateman, we don't know what he is yet, but Beckham's on a 1-year deal. So
I'm not worried about Beckham.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Odell's a freak. I'm a Giants fan, and you can't judge his talent.
He was a freak. You're right.
We'll see. I don't know what he looks like, but like you said, if we're talking about competition, I want to take a long-term look here and say Zay Flowers easily by next year. I mean, could be better than Bateman, but I'm not done with Bateman either. And then Jordan Addison, Kirk Cousins is in his mid-30s, and there's already been rumblings that the Vikings are trying to move on from him. What does that look like long-term? It's not easy to replace, but at least I could tell you that I think KJ Osborne is I think he's actually better than league average. I broke down some of his numbers, so I think that he's a bigger threat, but KJ Osborne is a free agent next year. So it could easily just be him and Justin Jefferson, and I love that for long-term outlook as well. Let's jump down to the tight ends. Obviously, just Dalton Kincaid was the only one drafted in round 1, but we did have some guys recently drafted in round 2, with Michael Myers going to the Raiders, and then also another guy going to the Lions too. So we can loop all these guys in. Obviously, from a fantasy standpoint, the Lions lost TJ Hawkinson. The Raiders lost Darren Waller. The Buffalo Bills have Dawson Knox. Of course, the one dynasty team I took over has Dawson Knox. Thanks, Bills. But Gladys, give us your quick thoughts about the tight ends. Anything stand out from your standpoint? Anything you like long-term?
Long-term, I actually don't like any of it long-term. I don't trust Josh McDaniel. Like, I thought Michael Mayer was probably one of the 2 best, like him and Kincaid were like 1 and 1A as far as receiving tight ends, that he goes to the Raiders with Jimmy G, who I don't know. If I had to choose, if I had to choose one, I would choose Michael Mayer because I think he has the higher upside. I don't understand the Bills' pick of Dalton Kincaid. I with Dawson Knox there, I don't understand. Someone last night said that they would start running a 2 tight end, and Dawson Knox would be the blocking tight end, and Kincaid, because of his passing or receiving ability, would be the receiving tight end. But I mean, Josh Allen likes Dawson Knox in the red zone, so I didn't get that pick. And
he just signed a contract extension too.
Yeah, I didn't understand it. And then Laporta with the Lions, I like Michael Mayer if I have to choose, but I don't actually like any of those landing spaces. Did the big guy didn't go right yet? The one I wanted to go to Cincinnati, the one that's like linebacker, Richardson.
Oh, Gladys with her IDP stuff going on. Jesus, Gladys, come on now. Sky, your thoughts about the tight ends?
Yeah, doesn't move the needle for me for fantasy. I don't really care about a Bills tight end regardless. I think, again, this is a nice NFL move. Doesn't matter for fantasy. Dalton Kincaid's a fine player. Good pedigree. Again, watched a lot of Utah football. He's a good player. I think this is basically Dawson Knox has a tough time staying healthy also. And I think this is change the scheme a bit to save Josh Allen. Incredible talent. Has been healthy so far in his career. Want to keep it that way. Also, I think this is just add an additional weapons pick for the Bills. You had a run of 4 of the best wide receivers in the league right before your picks. I would imagine if any of those 4 receivers were available when the Bills were on the clock, 2 picks after Jordan Addison went to the Vikings, they would have picked whoever was left. I'm very confident in that. They were all gone. So the next best athlete, maybe pass catcher, playmaker, is Dalton Kincaid. He could play a little bit slot. They have Isaiah McKenzie, who's fun, but Gabe Davis is really hit or miss outside of Stephon Diggs. So for me, whether it's a scheme change in general or Dawson Knox is just kind of that other guy, Dalton Kincaid's a nice NFL player. For fantasy purposes, you don't draft rookie tight ends that aren't named Kyle Pitts. And even if you do that, they may not blow up. He scored 1 touchdown during his rookie season, although he had the most receiving yards per rookie ever. So no fantasy value for me at all with Dalton Kincaid. Not interested in dynasty with Dawson Knox still there. And frankly, the Bills don't use their tight end anyway. So So for me, I'm not very interested. And then all the other tight ends for me in this draft are kind of a wash with where they're falling.
So just from a fantasy football, like long-term, listen, don't draft rookie tight ends, please, for the love of God, don't do that in redraft. But from a long-term, listen, the Raiders, we all know that Josh McDaniels has done with Rob Gronkowski for years. They traded Darren Waller, and Foster Moreau signed elsewhere this year. So remember that. So that tight end room is empty. For what they're looking for. They signed like Austin Hooper to a 1-year deal. That's his favorite. Austin Hooper's like, hey, you need a tight end, sign me for a year. How you doing? So that's Austin Hooper's life right now. But then you have this guy coming in who could easily become in an offense, by the way, who has proven over and over again to feature a tight end in Josh McDaniel's scheme. The other one, though, is Sam Laporta. I didn't know much about this kid going into it. I always like to look at these guys after where they land. Listen, there's a wide open spot with the TJ Hawkinson trade. Go to Player Profiler and look at his measurables. I'm like, holy crap, this guy, 91st percentile 40-yard dash, 85th percentile speed score, 90th percentile agility score. Those are the kind of numbers you want to see. 6'3", 245, not too big, but big enough to where you're like, okay, this guy has athletic measurables to be good for fantasy football. In an offense, by the way, in Jared Goff, we know Jared Goff hates throwing outside. He loves throwing up the middle,
totally.
And that's where the tight end lives. So there's plenty of opportunities for that kid long-term as well. Let's jump down to the linemen. Obviously, nothing gets the fantasy base going like a good offensive lineman discussion. We had a couple in the first round, including Arizona Cardinals, the Chicago Bears. By the way, I don't even know what I'm going to do with myself with Justin Fields anymore. At this point, I might just take him in the first round. Don't even care. Anyway, Tennessee Titans, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Jacksonville Jaguars all took an offensive lineman in the first round. Beefing up the offensive line, protection is key. We always talk about this a lot. Let's quickly run through this. Anybody feel like love the pick, love the protection? Gladys, you first. Anything stand out to you?
Oh, yeah. Of course, the Steelers picking Broderick, jumping over the Jets to get probably the last best offensive lineman that was available. And it was like a really happy time for me.
Dude's a monster too.
Yeah.
Georgia linemen are just nice.
Huge. He's a huge boy. And I was surprised what the guy from Northwestern kind of
Skronsky, that's my guy.
Don't you think he fell a little bit? Like, I thought he went a little lower than I thought he was going to go.
Yeah, I mean, there was projections he would go top 10. He went 11. So I don't know about falling, but once they moved up to get Will Anderson, the Texans moved up twice, and they got Will Anderson and C.J. Stroud. I think that disrupted that top 10 that seemed pretty solidified.
But did they?
And then Bijan being in the top 8 also, that kind of threw a wrench.
But did they say he's probably going to play guard?
Yeah.
So maybe
absolutely.
that's why too. That could be. But yeah. Anyway, go ahead, Gladys.
Oh, I thought I was done. My bad.
Well, I got you.
Well, you know what, Gladys? Stop, Gladys. You're done. All right, Sky, go ahead.
I got you. Great professional segue for the setup, the layup there, Gladys, for Peter Skronsky. It's my dog. As far as offensive linemen go, he's small at 6'4", 313. The guy's tiny, so he's definitely more of a guard body, if you will. But look, if you're not going to go at the top and get Paris Johnson with the Cardinals, which I thought was a great move for them, they need to kind of just rebuild, unfortunately, in Arizona. So getting Ohio State, left tackle, obviously that's massive there. But the next best option for me is another Big Ten offensive tackle and lineman, right? So he'll play guard in Tennessee, but Tennessee's also kind of rebuilding. And you got to start with the offensive lineman, defensive lineman. Obviously, they went with Will Levis at quarterback, so they're going to have the opportunity to have that match hopefully for quite a while there. But Skronsky for me is just a great athlete. Let's not forget, Quentin Nelson was a tackle also at Notre Dame, moved into guard, and he's widely regarded as the best lineman maybe outside of the tackle position in the NFL. This kid Skronsky is legit too. So I like that a lot. We don't give a lot of shout outs to offensive linemen, but the Darnell Wright move for Tennessee, I thought might be a little bit of a reach. He just didn't. I thought maybe Broderick Jones, which good for Gladys that he fell to Pittsburgh, but I thought, maybe Broderick Jones is the one that should go above that. And then shooting way down, Anton Harrison that ended up with the Jaguars. I thought that's a quote unquote steal as far as offensive linemen go coming out of Oklahoma. So I thought that was a good move there too.
When you're looking at these offensive linemen, the teams that you get them, I know a lot of times we overlook this stuff for fantasy football, but
Not me, baby.
oh well, Scott, you know us, man. I'm upset. It's just because so many times, like last year with the Bucks, the Rams, we see all these teams lose assets, and then you know who gets affected by that? The quarterback, and then all the skill position players.
Of course.
So adding depth and adding talent to the offensive line is key. Now, will all these guys pan out? Absolutely not. But offensive linemen do have a pretty decent hit rate in the first round. Arizona, I mean, Kyler Murray, that whole philosophy is going to shift. And listen, one of the bigger things for them too is they did not trade DeAndre Hopkins yet. Does Hopkins stay on the roster? It's going to be a lot easier for Kyler Murray to come back to this team if they have a better offensive line. He's not going to be as mobile coming off that injury, so that's important. The Chicago Bears, I mean, listen, if I was a dog, my tail would be wagging because now you have DJ Moore coming in, and then you got offensive line help coming in. I mean, Justin Fields to the moon, QB1 in 2023, hashtag. You have the Tennessee Titans, who, by the way, literally, we talked about this on this podcast. They have lost all 5 offensive line starters from just 2 to 3 years ago. All
Terrible.
5 are gone. Everything's gone. And then you're like, Ryan Tannehill stinks. Well, Ryan Tannehill lost everybody. Derrick Henry's back there. Just put John from accounting in front of me, and I will just push everybody else out of the way. So he doesn't matter. Pittsburgh, one of the biggest gripes I've had with the Steelers all this time was the offensive line. This guy knows that. I said Najee Harris, it's just not efficient enough. And last year it came to fruition because he wasn't getting all the targets. Investing in that offensive line, that team has a lot of continuity. I am all in on the Steelers this year, and I love this 100% for them as well. Jacksonville, by the way, the one blemish for the Jacksonville Jaguars is that they lost their right tackle, and now Cam Robinson might be suspended. So both tackles from last year might be out. So now they bring in a guy at least to bring in some talent. So hopefully that works as well. All right, before we close the show, Gladys, I'm going to give you the floor. Favorite defensive pick in the first round? Give us what you got.
I hate to say it, but Christian Gonzalez falling to the New England Patriots made me sad. Like, why? First of all, Washington, you guys suck. What is the freaking kid's name they took? Emmanuel Forbes. Emmanuel Forbes.
Oh,
and
go Ducks, baby.
Christian Gonzalez sitting there, and Bill Belichick waddles up to the podium and like throws the card at him and say, yes, we want Christian Gonzalez. That is my favorite pick. I will start him in IDP like today.
Let's go. Gladys with the duck love right at the end. Nice work. Hey, and shouts out to any OG Patriots fan, Duck fan, whatever. This kid is Patrick Chung all over again. I'm calling it right now.
Yeah, he's what? Why do you think Washington passed on him?
They got rid of Daniel Snyder, which is a massive move forward. Okay.
True.
But they're still the Washington franchise. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Okay.
And no disrespect to this kid Forbes, but you're right. Christian Gonzalez is definitely the option there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Jonathan Mingo just went to the Panthers, wide receiver.
I know. I love what the Panthers are doing. I'm uncomfortably becoming slowly obsessed with what's going on over there because I like it. I like what they did, and I love Frank Wright. I think he's going to be a stabilizing hand. And listen, Jose is just throwing that shade at Ryan Tannehill. Sky, any final thoughts about the first round of the NFL draft? Anything you want to highlight we haven't talked about, or is there something you just got to get off your chest here?
No, honestly, Gladys kind of stole my thunder. I love giving it. No, it's good.
Gladys.
It's good. It's not stealing my thunder. It's more, how do I want to say? It's not stealing my thunder. It's more, validating my stoke. How about that?
Okay.
No, Christian Gonzalez was going to be my defensive shout out. You know what? I will say this. I'd be remiss if we don't talk about how ridiculous the Eagles continue to get, right? So the Eagles go up front, right? And they flex extra, which they just don't need. And they get Jalen Carter, which is amazing. Like Georgia, all around incredible defensive lineman. Then at the very end, they go, oh, the whole rest of the NFL that needed defensive linemen blew it and left Nolan Smith, the teammate of Georgia, on there. And now basically their whole offensive line is Georgia teammates, which, by the way, just continually have the best defense in the NFL and win national championships. So the Eagles don't really need any fillers. But what they could use with older guys on the defensive line kind of moving on or in the twilight of their career, if you will, reloading with these dudes who are a starter on every NFL defensive lineman and getting 2 in the same first round when they might be backups because they're so loaded up front. If we're talking defense, I mean, the Eagles continue to smash, and I have to imagine they're far and away the front runner in the NFL right now for Super Bowl outside of the Chiefs, obviously.
Yeah, and I think at this point, don't forget, by the way, one of the things we do on this channel, we're going to talk about winners and losers, every team the rest of this month. But go check out the episodes we did previously. There's a lot of players we talked about and highlighted that are winners, potential winners and losers. The first name that jumps out to me is Rashad Penny. Not being impacted by a guy like, Gibbs or Bijan Robinson. Penny stock rises along with Kenny Gainwell. Shout out to Sky Gawasko. Got to throw some love to his way because he's on the show today.
Let's go.
But don't forget the guy. It's always fun to hyper focus on who got picked, but sometimes just to think about who didn't get picked by certain teams and what's that impact on the current rosters. That's where you're going to find a lot of value in drafts. Don't forget about the guys that could be emerging this year. So I love the NFL draft. Enjoy day 2, guys. This was our day 1 reaction show. I really appreciate you jumping on today. And spent last year, by the way, I did the same thing. It was my first show on Razzball, and I was by myself, just sitting there going, "Hey, first round picks!" So just to show the world, I have friends now at Razzball. We got our 2.
You're up to 2, my man. 2 friends.
I love it. I love it. And I got my dog. I got my fiance. I got 2 people out here. I got so many friends now. I'm good to go.
Life is good.
At Sky Gawaska, go follow him on Twitter at Sky Gawaska. Follow Gladys L. Tyler on Twitter as well. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment. Let us know your thoughts. What was your favorite first round pick? We'll be back next week talking winners and losers from the NFL draft all month long. We'll be talking about each division's winners and losers. We're excited. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Follow us across the board at Razzball Fantasy on YouTube, IG, and TikTok. Thanks again. We are out of here, folks.